But oh well. Like I was saying, Wall Street Bets is a Reddit. Obviously, there was a few people. There could have been people like me who were an ex-banker, an ex-stock analyst, so they can just look at these metrics and see that GameStop was worth more than it was trading for. So they bought them. They bought the shares. And when they saw that the hedge fund was all upset, they said, "No, let's hold on. Let's help them lose some money because they're going to have to buy shares." And so the price is going to go up. If they hold them, they're going to have to offer a higher price. So what ended up happening? Well, the price got up. The sell was like $200. The ask was like 5,000, and the sell was like 200. So people were willing to buy it. They were offering to buy your GameStop shares for $200. That was likely the hedge fund. But anyone with GameStop said no. If you want to buy it, it'll be $5,000. So what did they do? These hedge fund dudes called up the regulators and these little small trade apps and said, you have to halt funding because we're going to lose billions and billions and billions. And the sad part is they all own pieces of each other, so they're all in it together. So they halted trading, but not completely, right? Because they can halt trading, because in my history there was times when they needed to halt trading because things were going really bad, and they didn't want it to, they didn't want a terrible runoff. But what they did is they halted buying by the average person. You could sell your GameStop shares too, but you couldn't buy any. Now wait a minute here. Not allowing people to buy and only allowing to sell, we've talked about this. That's what short selling does, right? It drives the price down. And worse yet, when you're trading in giant swaths of these stocks, it drives the price down further. Imagine what happens when the regulator halts trading for the average person and you can only sell your trades. Well, that drives the price through the floor. So a stock that you may have purchased as a regular individual legally in the open market for $200 is now dropped to $30, not by anything you've done, but because regulators halted trading. So now we're talking millions, possibly, of people have lost billions of dollars just so that one hedge company didn't lose a few billion, or who knows how much they would have lost, but they bet on that. They bet on that, and they lost. They deserve to lose that. Everyone that purchased those stocks do not deserve to be defrauded this way. And that's what it is. If you halt funding to protect someone who was betting against the market and lost, they're gaming the system. And when the entire system is gamed, that's why we're seeing these sorts of, I don't know what to call it, when average people are being ripped off every day, and now this is just the worst I have ever seen, and news is trying to say that the average individual caused this. How could the average individual who has no power to buy or sell shares outside of these apps, as proven, like I said, proved by the fact that they halted the trading? So it's not the individual investor that has any control over the market. It is solely these big boys. And now they're acting wholly like we called this. 10 years ago in 2008 it happened, and 10 years before that, around 98. I went to school in the 90s, and there seemed to have been the beginnings of this, that the market got gamed every 10 years or so to draw out a certain amount of profit from the market. In 2008, they nearly screwed up completely, because I used to trade in commodities, and what they did was they actually defrauded. Again, they made a bet. They bundled some bad securities, sold them, and they failed. They made a bet and lost. They should have paid the price, not been bailed out, right? And yet here we are again. These hedge funds are losing billions, but the average investor is losing billions. So who's going to get the bailout this time? I argue that if this doesn't lead to a complete and total overhaul of the system, then I don't know how we go forward from here. Because in 2008, they for a very short period of time changed the laws so that they couldn't bundle these sorts of commodities, these dangerous, high-risk commodities, and yet they've gone and changed that legislation again. So they have those rights again to be able to, play with these people. That's what it really is. I mean, that's why I held to my ethics as a banker and as a stockbroker, a personal financial advisor, is because no matter how big the company you're working for is, you have to remember, just like small business, the vast majority of the economy, the vast majority of the market runs on smaller investors, right? Runs on people who are invested in a mutual fund even. I mean, I'm a few years out of the market now, but it was approaching the same sort of volume, right? The mutual fund market was approaching the same sort of volume as the stock market for the average individual, right? Stock, I mean, that's arguably what mutual funds were designed for, to help reduce the individual risk of investing. And yet, when people got together to try to help each other further and reduce that risk further by getting together in a group, they're calling them frauds or criminals. It's absolutely ridiculous. This is the reason why I mention it is the PBS, and then there was even on the radio they said they're looking at doing like a Netflix about the story, and they're looking to buy people's stories. The story hasn't even come out yet. It's absolutely ridiculous that they think they're gonna try to tell the story before it's even been hashed. Like I said, there's going to be more and more coming very, very quickly. What makes me sad, though, is if they're complete, this is the real truth here. If legislators are honest about what went on here, it's going to erode the confidence, not just in the markets, but in legislation and finance, and even in the politicians. So when I say that I don't think the guilty parties are going to be held account, I don't think it's because of really nefarious. I think it's going to be twofold. It's going to be one, because buddies are going to call in favors and say, hey, you got to help us out here. We made a mistake, but we shouldn't be left holding the bag. And on the other hand, they're just going to tell the politicians that, hey, if you tell people honestly what happened here, it's going to cause a crash in the market because the average investor is going to lose their faith in the... But again, here we go again, treating us like we're children. As if we are so, I hate to say it, dumb, that when we hear that these, as if it would be a surprise, that these legislators, these finance people are crooks, we're going to all rush to the market to sell all our stocks and take a loss no matter what, just to get out. As if we'd be that dumb, right? But, I mean, I think it plays to our human nature to think, well, okay, yeah, maybe there are some dumb people like that. No. I'm starting to see what many of them are saying is that they're kind of overreaching at this point, but... So that's about all I wanted to get to. Right, RobinHood was this discount brokerage that made its money not from the people buying the shares, but they sold what the people were buying and talking about to big business. GameStop was just this company that was looking like it was likely to fail, right? I mean, video games, who needs to go into the game store and buy a game? But I got news for you. Just go into a mall on a release day. We were in a mall one morning, some crazy early morning, like, gosh, it was 7 o'clock before it was even open, and there was already a lineup at GameStop. This was just months ago, during Corona. Just do a little research. But obviously, yes, if you, like I talked about in one of my podcasts, if you get too fixated by one metric, like McNamara in Vietnam, we call him this great data scientist, yet he was fixated on the kill ratio in Vietnam that we all know was a bad, but no, of course he's a great data scientist. And here we are again. So yes, no one needs to go into a video game store because they can download the video game. Yet People seem to still want to. But that's neither here nor there, because what ended up happening is it didn't matter this possible failure that you can download your video games and how many people really need to go into a video game store, and they were getting a new CEO because they were in trouble. You add all that together, they overdid it though. They overdid it. They shorted it too much to the point where the stock was worth more than it was trading for, which caused a run on the stock, which caused these guys to not be able to buy the stock for less than what they bought it for, not allowing them to make money on the trade, not allowing them to buy back stocks because people on WallStreetBets held on to them, not allowing them to close their short position, and lastly, by not being able to close their position, they would have lost billions. They would have lost this bet. So, barring that, that's where these legislatures, these trading platforms halted the buying by the average individual, if that isn't the worst, just so that they could, close their position. But as I said earlier, to save one hedge fund a few $billions, which they deserve to lose because they bet and lost, they have just caused the market on the whole, this is thousands if not millions of investors, to have lost billions, right? Because again, to save a hedge fund from losing billions on a bet they lost, people who paid $200 for a GameStop share saw their trading halted and the price drop. So what was your choice? You either lose all of your money or some of it. That was your only choice. Can you blame people who... I am proud of the people who dug their heels in and said, no, I'm not going to sell it. I don't think it would have changed it because enough people probably did sell, because I heard a number of people had borrowed money to invest. So not everyone could hold, which is the only historical successful strategy, is to buy good stocks and hold them for the long term. So I guess I'll leave that as my final piece of advice. Be careful of the advice you get. Maybe that'll be my last piece of advice. But yeah, so barring any discussion or